know what you're about to listen to? The Coolville Urbanism Podcast. I'm your host, Michael colville-andersen. You might have heard a thing or two about Copenhagen. Sometimes it might feel like you've had it up to here hearing about Copenhagen. This city has been riding a branding wave for more than a decade. Food, design, bicycles, architecture, quality of life, urbanism. By and large, it's well-deserved. But no city is perfect, or ever will be. I myself have been critical of certain aspects of Copenhagen urbanism. Check the link in the description to an article I wrote recently entitled, Copenhagen, Too Smug to Learn? This episode is about one glaring dent and scratch in the chrome of Copenhagen's glossy green brand, trees. Or rather, the glaring lack of them in this city. I met with two guests who know a lot about this subject. First, I met with Sandra Høj by the lakes in Copenhagen. We sat on a bench by the water with lots of passers-by, bird song, which is almost becoming a theme in this podcast, and even some quacking ducks. Sandra is on a mission to, quite simply, save the trees. Her energy is contagious. Her passion is remarkable. But for Sandra, it all started in 2009 with a cool blog, Classic Copenhagen.
I started the blog because I wanted to tell people Copenhagen is not that bad. And then it sort of, for a while it was that, and then it turned around when it's not that great either, you know. So now, because now we're sort of being swarmed with people who think it's just, oh, it's God, fantastic, it's so green, and you know, and then green smoke, I call it.
Green smoking. Wait, there's greenwashing, now there's
it's green smoke. Green smoke is when you're like, you know it's not, but it just looks really well when you know, it looks good when you say it.
So from the blog, Classic Copenhagen 2009, things changed for you?
Well, yes. I was spotting a lot of street art at the time, and through, this awakening, so I realized when I started really looking at my city, that I had been unlooking for a long time. There were a lot of things I missed, and so I started with really spotting the street art, taking pictures, sharing, and then other things crept in, because once you take the filter off, you see everything, not just street art, but other things. And then I started to notice, for instance, the garbage situation nearby where we're sitting right now is that people were throwing cups all over the place. And I was getting very irritating with that. And at one point, I found myself like yelling at people, "Pick up after yourself," you know. And I went home and I had a conversation with myself. I was like, "Listen, this is no good." But I also realized that it annoyed me so much, and that actually was a problem. So I came up with a solution, and I made some. I call it the test tubes, which is like an accessory to the garbage can. It's a tube that I screwed on, and I put on it, stack your cups here and just throw the lids in the garbage. Because then, they were also overflowing, and it was not handled well by the city. Well, the first one was just like a poster tube, one of those cardboard things. I painted it the same color so it would not look ugly. I painted the same color as the garbage can, and I painted the words on it, it's empty cups here, and an arrow to the lids. And people, instantly they got it. They just thought, yeah, of course. They were stacking them at the side, and the lids went in the garbage, and there was for a whole week I just went by and took pictures, and I noticed that it really instantly made a difference. The city just took it down, and I put the story on my blog with the results, and then it just went crazy from there. I got, Atlantic Cities did a story about it, and Unconsumption did a story. It was just like it went viral, and they all, because the city wouldn't respond to my request, can we make a test out of this? And then it became so embarrassing for the city because they never responded to me. And that was so obvious with all the viral... They all ended with, they don't want to listen to her, but we know it works, So they contacted me and said, okay, let's make a dummy then. And they were just dragging their feet. They were very reluctant. They were forced to do it. We put up the test tubes in an aluminum thing they made, and it worked. And when they took them down after the test was over, they said, we don't have a cup litter problem, and they just ignored it again.
We don't have a cup litter problem.
Yes.
Every country in the world, in the Western world anyway, has a cup litter problem.
And I call it now Copen, we don't have a cup litter problem, Hagen, when I talk about it. And then it's the test tubes.
That's a really big T-shirt, yeah.
I know, but it's wanted to go back and do something else again, because people write me now that they do it all over the world. They sort of adapted the idea, and it works. And there's someone who did it on a big football stadium. They were really happy with the results, stacking the beer cups, and so it works. Totally works. But you know, we don't need it here because we don't have that problem, obviously.
I remember that. That was super cool.
Yeah.
I remember it going viral and, you know, taking photos of it myself. Simple solution, man. Simple Danish design, right? But now, Sandra, come on. When you get out of bed every single morning for the last few years, there's been one thing on your mind.
Yes.
Trees.
Yes, that's it. That's the big one. That's why I didn't get around to more of the trash situation. Like, you have to pick your battles, and this is mine. Totally mine.
I call you the crazy tree lady, right?
I know.
With affection, of course, but I mean, you just...
Crazy like a heart attack, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, having known you for so many years, I mean, this is just really your primary focus. I know you do other stuff, right? But I mean, what you got to tell me how the hell that happened. Like, what was the catalyst for it? All of a sudden, you're thinking really passionately about the trees in Copenhagen and the green canopy and all of that. What happened?
What happened, it was actually across from where we're sitting over here on the other side. There was, I was watching huge piles of a very old tree cut into pieces and left on the side to be picked up. And at that point, I had not realized how much I love trees. I always loved trees, but I was not aware of it, which I think is true for everyone. But at that point, that was the turning point for me. I saw this tree and I stopped my bike and I just sobbed. And the whole day I felt like I was in mourning. It was really terrible. And I went home and wrote about it online on the Twitter thing. I had this Twitter account at the point. And I realized, that really made an impression on me. That's weird. I became aware of how I take trees for granted and how happy they make me. And then shortly after, I realized all the trees on all the corners. It's 4 big corners on the bridge where there are bunkers. From the World War, you know, they built these bunkers. The trees, huge old trees, are grown into these constructions. And I found out that within a few weeks, the city had decided, in the wisdom, to just demolish all the bunkers. By that, also felling all the trees because the root system would be entangled. And then we would just get some green squares that they could, you know, let out or whatever the plan was. And it's going to cost a fortune, of course, but the thing was that they were going to destroy all these trees, and then that I thought, I cannot let that happen. So I on my blog again, I asked street artists, and I said, can you please go adopt a tree, decorate it in any way you want. Let's make some action. Let's put some focus on these trees and tell people this is what's about to happen. And they did, and we opened this Facebook. Friend Jenny and me, we opened this Facebook group first for me on Facebook, and I, you know, say save the bunkers, and 850 people signed up in one day, and the media were like, "What?
Was it these bunkers
yes,
on the other side of the...
all these 4 corners.
Yeah.
Well, this one doesn't have bunkers, but I guess they would flatten it just for looks.
Yeah.
Or at least 3 corners with huge old trees, the only healthy trees we have in Copenhagen, pretty much. So, and they. And the media was so surprised that so many people signed up so fast for this. And they're like, let's write about it then. And then when the media started writing about it, the politicians got really antsy, you know, and put a hold to it. And then they asked the local councils to make a questionnaire. They asked people they knew, and everybody was asking everybody, what do you think about this? And it turned out that 9 out of 10 Copenhageners wanted to preserve these areas, you know, save the money and keep it as it is. So they did. It took about a year, and then you know, that was sort of the starting point for me, because then I realized, okay, if this can happen, if they could fell all these trees for no good reason, what else are they doing? And then I started looking, and then I found out what's going on, and I can't even explain how bad it is in Copenhagen. And people are like, it's so green, it's a disaster zone.
You cried over a tree being chopped up. This is like a Hollywood film starting here, right?
That was sort of like the awareness that happened, and then
like Aaron Brockovich, right?
Well,
one little thing happened.
I don't know. Can you compare me to anything? I don't know. It was just like the loss of one tree made a huge difference, and then finding out that the rest were going to go as well. And I knew, multiply that sorrow by all of them, that would not be. I could not pass this corner again if they were gone.
But you could have had your little cry, go home and thought, yeah, that sucks, and then not think about it anymore. But
if it didn't feel like a death of a family member, yes, I probably could have, but it really hit me hard. Yeah, and then with no, I could not leave that be. No, that was really like, but it's a live thing, and it made, you know, I really felt that loss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was your catalyst, and then that really has accelerated over the past few years.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this is really all you ever write about on Facebook. And
I know.
and whatnot,
you know,
right?
I cannot even
Crazy
stand myself
lady.
sometimes. Yeah, well, it turns out that I'm not so crazy after all. You know.
Yeah, we know that.
We know that.
Yeah.
It's it then came from the bunkers and moved on to save the urban trees, Red Byens Træer, which is the Danish name for it. So that it became like a citizens movement focused on what is happening to the urban trees.
I remember when you started with your tree thing. I remember I sent you all these aerial photos from the Second World War.
Yeah.
Because I kind of, you know, when your friends do something, you kind of like wander into it with them and sort of, you know, get into
nice.
what their issue is. And I remember like, hey, Sandra, look at this link here. Look at this.
So green.
Amazing trees in Copenhagen. My God, this was so foliage rich. The green canopy was epic back in the years after the war. Now, I have friends who come and visit, and they're saying, "Oh, yeah, like literally, where are your trees?"
They notice.
Yeah, people notice, man.
So nice.
And so, I mean, what happened between the 1960s and 1950s in Denmark and today?
It's thoughtlessness. They are not aware of the importance. There was. When I talked to some of the gardeners, they say in the 80s they handled it wrong, so they made the conditions bad for a lot of the trees. I think the attitude is what it's always been. Today, it's not like they learned anything. They haven't. They still do what they've done since the 50s, and this is why we still lose trees. This speed we're doing, and they're planning their trees occupy space that you can use for building. So they will, if there are pockets between houses with one or two trees, it's like, that's not occupied by anything. Let's flatten the thing, and then they cut down precious trees, you know, to build another house, another office building. If they want to do a road, the first thing they do is to take the trees away, because then they would rather take the trees away than they would eat into the lanes of the cars. Even if they have 4 lanes, they would rather eat into the pedestrian area and the recreational space. So even now, when you plan cycle lanes, which is something you're also really excited about, they would put them in the green paths, which is nice. But they just find any excuse to just put it into take it from nature, you know, and leave the cars be, because let's not mess with parking spaces. Let's not mess with the lanes that they drive in. You know, there's this whole let's not touch that area. Everybody can agree that we should have the bike lanes that puts them in the green stuff, you know, and call it something nice. We'll brand it. We'll spin it.
Now, I remember a quote from somebody in the police department who were involved in the redesign of some square somewhere, and people were, maybe even you, I can't remember even when it was, talking about, but the trees, we gotta say that, you know, cut down those nice trees, and some cop said, now there's a reason the chainsaw was invented. Like, boom. Oh, you don't know this? I thought that was...
No, but it doesn't surprise me. But I talked to the police for almost an hour. I talked to one of the guys who decided that instead of putting the bike lane next to the trees, we've got to flatten the trees and make some nice parking spots as well. And it was all, the judgment was because of behavior, because anticipated behavior from drivers. We're not gonna do what you suggest, because even though the cars are not allowed to stand still and unload stuff, we know they will, which will cause cyclists to swerve and so we're just going to flatten the trees, and then, so they just removed a big row of trees.
I mean, there is science, there are standards, there are things that we know about how to design a road or a cycle track, but I'm not saying it has to dictate the trees.
No, but they don't know, because I'm talking to this police guy who's in charge of these decisions, and are you even aware that there's a research showing that traffic planners all over the world actually use trees constructively to lower the speed and create these safe spaces? And he never heard about it. He's like, duh.
Oh, dude. I mean, I've had this with the police too about bicycle behavior and everything. Oh my God. They know, they can read, they know the laws, and that's all they know. If you're the protagonist in this tale, who are your main antagonists? Who pisses you off the most when you wake up in the morning and go, oh, I mean, How do you define?
It's this
define your enemy, Sandra.
It's this fat layer of administration. It's between the people who know about trees, who work with trees, who get by with what they're given, and the politicians. There are actually some very good politicians who fight the good fight. And then there's a whole department between them, like layers and layers and layers of all kinds of with their own little agenda, and we want to do things like we always did, and fuckers. And they are actually, I guess, yeah. but they're. I mean, there's an example with the salting business. It became very obvious how much damage salt was causing to the trees, and I had some politicians who were willing to go forward and propose that we spend more money on the alternative. And then he came back to me and he said, "You know what? We are told from the administration that salt is no big deal. It flushes out in the sea and it doesn't harm anything." And like, is that what you're told? Can that be? And I talked to even the Lord Mayor was out because he was campaigning to be re-elected, and I was so lucky to run into him, and I asked him to fill out a questionnaire if he would be so kind, and he did, and he replied what he was told from the administration, that it flushes out the sea and it's no big deal. And I was like, oh my God, these people are lying to the people in charge. Why is that? So we actually unraveled this whole thing. A really good journalist, he sat down, he was like, let's get to the bottom of this, and he made them admit publicly, salt is a very nasty business. It's just, oops. But they've been actively lying for years, just to balance budgets. I don't know what the reason would be to lie about something so serious. But it puts the politicians in a shitty light when they don't have all the information at hand, and that is a big problem in the situation with the Copenhagen trees. It's the fat layer in between who's so busy keeping their budgets and their jobs and status quo.
Okay, so bureaucracy, this fat layer in the monster that is the City of Copenhagen. I mean, they have like 50,000 employees. They're Denmark's largest employer.
I'm not surprised. It's like fighting a giant octopus, I feel.
Yeah. I've heard the description of some departments as in the City of Copenhagen as like island kingdoms. And there's a chieftain on each island who has his own agenda, and you're supposed to be all working together, man. But anyway, so it doesn't surprise me. It sounds like it's a much more complex
They're
situation.
dangerous. They're super dangerous enemies. So it's very hard for me I have to keep so many things secret because people stand to lose jobs. It's so dangerous to be enemies with these kings of the islands. Yeah, it really is.
So is that your primary? That's not fun. You want an antagonist that has a face that we can name in the podcast, but you're just saying it's like thick layers of Danish bureaucracy that is...
It's that, and it's also the reluctance to... it's also politicians who decide that it's more important to line the pockets of the people who have the money already. Building. Let's give them permission to build whatever they want. It's just a formality. Everything protecting trees is like bumps on the road or formalities or annoying. They actually say so on. Their quote is saying so in the news, like defending people who want to destroy the city. Why do they need to destroy a city? Oh, listen, they have to because otherwise they can't build. And it's like, this is not your job. You're representing me. You're not representing the developer.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. It smells. It does smell a lot. There are a lot of politicians who seem to be favoring, people who have money already, like a small group of people who want to invest and develop, and
So when I'm shooting the life-size city and we're traveling around the world, this subject comes up in our research, and also in many of the cities we talk to people who are doing something similar, the other versions of Sandra around the world. It really is an interesting topic because we're learning much more about it nowadays, right? Like it's the stuff that I've read in connection with the research for the TV series. It's just fascinating, and how we're measuring green canopy. Some of the Bangkok. They have like something like 3 square meters of green per person. Like it's a shockingly low number. Other cities are much higher. When you look at where Copenhagen ranks for being a green city, it looks pretty good, but that's because we have huge parks sort of within the city limits, and that's calculated as green space. It's not on all of our streets. Like since I've known you, I've noticed, man, we don't have any trees on our streets anymore.
I'm so happy people notice now. I'm really happy. This is one of the benefits of what we're doing. It's like it's this huge movement. It's 7 years now or something, but it really has put it on the radar. And I know there's a lot of people really grateful that there's so much mention of trees now, because it sneaks in, and I do see improvement, but not as much as I would like.
The one woman I interviewed in Bangkok, Oraya, an arborist, I believe, anyway, university educated, she's basically the Sandra in Bangkok. One of the greatest quotes in, so far, 3 seasons of shooting the life-size city was her. I'm saying, well, we've come to the point where we can't trust the city with taking care of the city anymore. Boom. That was just like the greatest.
That's the favorite quote,
ever.
yeah.
Delivered with this dry smile that she has. It's so awesome.
It applies to Copenhagen as well, yeah.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask. I mean, so they're educating the city workers, just the dudes who go out and cut trees, to teach them how to do it well. What's that level like here in Copenhagen? Do your average Joes who go out and have to trim the trees for the city, do they know what they're doing?
The thing is that the city is outsourcing a lot of stuff.
This is a podcast, so we can't see all of your facial reactions. Like, you're rolling your eyes. You're like, oh, you're face palming yourself. Sometimes
I'm face palming at this point. It's the city is outsourcing a lot of stuff, and there's actually a bean counter company who's been in now and say we can save a lot of money. We just outsource everything. All the green stuff can be outsourced. And what they're doing now is that once you say we have a job here. We have to have some trees pruned or whatever. The city is by law obligated to pick the lowest bidder, and that means you get the lowest quality. That it sort of follows.
Some dude with a chainsaw.
So we get fucking dudes with chainsaws, and we just now out here on the school area. They had like 15 to 20 trees cut pieces to pieces. It was like a huge canopy cover at this very corner, and we don't have a lot in Copenhagen of those areas. So we rely on the schools and the churches and the stuff to provide that. There's a Freedom of Information Act, and I've asked now to see why would you have this done? What were the criteria you picked the people who did this misery for, and are you going to have it? Are you going to be compensated? Because these trees, everybody who sees these trees, who know about trees, says they will never bloom again. So it's like 15 huge trees that are killed by incompetence. And it's one department in the city. It's not the tree department, but it's another department. That's another misery that they are spreading it out. So I wrote them and I said, I would like to see who said these trees needed this treatment, and will you also seek compensation for this? So I'm in the process of that now, to see what's the answer to that. But so to answer your question, yes. So there's a lot of people who are not, who are hired from the outside, who don't know what they're doing with trees. Yeah, okay. They're destroying them.
You'd think we were better at that in Copenhagen. I mean, the city generally, compared to other cities in the world, is well run, well managed. Maybe too much bureaucracy on many levels, but it's kind of weird that it's just one big fail in Copenhagen.
They also have good people. I mean, they do have good people. They have some gardeners, on staff that are really good at what they're doing, and they have, and they do hire really good arborists as well. So there are good forces. It's not just everything is being plowed down, but there are just some very tragic examples of how this system is failing. But of course, there are also